Let's discuss a bit about circles, and as usual I will start, anytime I talk about circles here, I'll always start by drawing a really bad circle, like I promised. Okay, let's begin with what the radius of a circle is. An important point for a circle is the center. So there's the center of this circle. The radius is simply the distance from the center to any point along the edge of the circle. So that's what we call the radius. Alright, the diameter is the total distance across the circle that goes through the center, right? I could measure from here to here. Well, that goes across the circle, but it doesn't go through the center of the circle, so that's not the diameter. That has a different name, which we won't discuss. So the diameter is the total distance across the circle. Clearly, the diameter is made up of the radius plus another radius. So the diameter equals 2 times the radius. Or, if you want, the radius is half of the diameter. So you could take 1/2 times your diameter to get your radius. A lot of people like to say you divide the diameter by 2. That's the same thing. Finally, the last thing here, the distance around the edge of the circle is what we call the circumference. Let's write that down here. Okay, so the circumference is pretty famous because if you ever take the circumference divided by the diameter, so the distance around divided by the distance across, you'll always get the number pi. This has been known for a long time, and pi has some interesting properties which we won't discuss here, but that's where pi comes from. Take the distance around divided by the distance across. And pi is approximately 3.14 something. Okay, so you know, if you do calculations with pi, you should use the pi button on your calculator and not use 3.14 because they're not the same thing. 3.14 is just an approximation. Okay, so that's a little bit about what pi is, but from that you can get some things. For example, the circumference is equal to the diameter times pi, or pi times the diameter. That comes directly from the equation we just looked at. Or you could replace diameter with 2 times the radius, right? So if you do that, you're going to have pi times 2 times your radius. This one is more standard, and we typically will rewrite this second version as, usually we like to put the number in the front, so 2 times pi times the radius. Okay, and notice that there's no exponent up here. When I write, for example, when I write the number 3, that's the same thing as 3 to the first power. So when I write radius, that's to the first power. The point of this is circumference is a distance, right? So that means you should get a unit like feet to the first power, not feet squared or something. So since this is to the first, you'd get a unit like feet to the first. That means it's a distance. That's how I've always remembered the difference between the circumference formula and the area formula for a circle. The area of a circle is pi times the radius, not to the first, right? It's not a distance anymore. Area is two-dimensional, how much space it takes up, how much surface area it has. So it's pi times the radius squared. So out of this you'll get a unit like feet squared, and that's an area unit. So here the radius is squared, here the radius is not. So this is an area, this is a length. Circumference is the length. Okay, so that's a few things about circles. Hopefully you find it helpful.